questioned Yoshida repeatedly. Finally, Yoshida admitted to Professor Hata that his tale was fiction. Professor Hata is a well-known historian for his empirical research. You may wonder why Yoshida told such a lie. Yoshida was a professional liar. His book sold so well because he told such sensational stories, sensational lies. He appeared on TV so many times. Repeatedly he was invited to South Korea for his fake apology and confession. He became famous and he made money. The United Nations Kumaraswamy Report. However, a horrible thing took place. The U.S. Congressional Resolution on Comfort Women in July 2007 cited Yoshida's book as a source and accused Japan for coercive recruitment of comfort women. Moreover, one United Nations report accepted Yoshida's book, Yoshida's made-up story as truth. This UN report is called the Kumaraswamy Report in short. In 1994, the UN Commission on Human Rights appointed Radhika Kumaraswamy, a Sri Lanka citizen, to submit a report on comfort women controversy. In 1996, Ms. Kumaraswamy submitted the report. The official title of this report is A Report on the Mission to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the Republic of Korea and Japan on the issue of military sexual slavery in wartime. Ms. Kumaraswamy ignored empirical research. In the first chapter of the report, she defined comfort women as military sex slaves. She jumped to conclusions from evil will and preoccupation. Irrational dogmatism dominates this report. With regard to the Kumaraswamy report, rational empirical research is totally ignored. The United Nations is a very liberal biased institution, but Kumaraswamy report is nothing but an outcome of anti-Japan racism. This report has so many defects. Let me point out just two of them. The first defect, Ms. Kumaraswamy writes falsehood about Professor Hata's testimony. Professor Hata told Ms. Kumaraswamy very clearly that there were no employer-employee relations between the Japanese military and the comfort women by showing records of interviews with comfort women. But the Kumaraswamy report writes that Dr. Hata also believes that most comfort women were under contract with the Japanese army. It's a lie, isn't that terrible? Ms. Kumaraswamy is a liar. Professor Hata, of course, protested against the UN, but his protest was in vain. The second defect. The second chapter of Kumaraswamy report determines the historical facts about comfort women. In this chapter, there are 11 footnotes. 10 notes cite one book, George Hicks, The Comfort Women. Out of 11 footnotes, one footnote cites Yoshida Seiji's book as evidence. This proves enough that the Kumaraswamy report is all rubbish. The credibility of Kumaraswamy report also depends on George Hicks' book. George Hicks was a Hong Kong-based Australian economist. He cannot read Japanese nor Korean. Therefore, he was not able to read primary sources and most of the literature on this subject. He depended on translated English materials. He acquired 80% of his materials from a Korean woman residing in Japan. Ms. Ho of the Jeju newspaper had demonstrated that Yoshida's book was fabrication. But Hicks didn't know it. Probably unintentionally, Hicks was manipulated by North Korea. That's my guess. The materials that Hicks quotes are nothing but gatherings of unverified rumors. From a historian's viewpoint, Hicks' book is worthless. Hicks' book is worthless. It means Kumaraswamy report is rubbish. Worthless too. It's a slipshod piece of work. By the way, Kumaraswamy, as Hicks, can read neither Korean nor Japanese. Ms. Kumaraswamy deserves more criticism because in Kumaraswamy report, she adopted North Korean propaganda as a fact. North Korea is an infamous dictatorial state, as you know. When Ms. Kumaraswamy visited North Korea, its government told her as follows, I quote, Japan used force to recruit 200,000 Korean women as sex slaves, subjected them to brutal sexual abuse, and then killed most of them. Unquote. These false accusations are presented in Kumaraswamy report as the official stance of the North Korean government. Kumaraswamy stands hand in hand with the North Korean dictator. Can you trust this kind of report and this kind of person? The Kono statement. You have already grasped the essence of comfort women issue. Then you may ask me a question. How come the Japanese government admitted coercive recruitment of comfort women and apologized? That's a big question. I'll answer. That was a grave mistake of one coward Japanese politician. His name is Kono Yohei. This guy. Kono was the chief cabinet secretary of the Miyazawa cabinet. On August 4th, 1993, just a few days before the end of the Miyazawa cabinet, Kono issued his personal statement. The Japanese government had formed a research group to investigate the comfort women issue. The group conducted a complete research of the Japanese government's documents. The investigation discovered no evidence of official coercion. The investigation discovered no evidence of official coercion. The government and military organizations' bureaucracies cannot function without documents. If there was official coercion of comfort women, there must be documents that ordered coercion. However, the research group couldn't find even one piece of document that proved official coercion, and there was no credible witness to confirm coercive recruitment of comfort women. Kono, notwithstanding, admitted official coercion. The reason was mounting political pressure from South Korea. South Korean government high-handedly demanded that the Japanese government should acknowledge official coercion and apologize. The Miyazawa cabinet should have announced that there was no official coercion as a conclusion of its research. But the Miyazawa cabinet surrendered to political pressure from South Korea. Prime Minister Miyazawa had apologized to South Korea already. There were no valid documents to demonstrate coercion. Therefore, the research group cited testimonies of former comfort women as only evidence of coercion. But the research group didn't cross-examine and verify their testimonies. As Professor An of Seoul University said, those testimonies are very inconsistent and not reliable at all. Anyway, the Miyazawa cabinet deceived people, and its chief cabinet secretary, Kono, betrayed Japan. Let me read the most important part of the Kono statement. Quote, the government study has revealed that in many cases, comfort women were recruited against their own will, through coaxing, coercion, etc., and that at times administrative or military personnel directly took part in the recruitments. This is the most important part of the Kono statement. The Kono statement was Chief Cabinet Secretary's personal statement. It was not even cabinet resolution, and the rules are rather ambiguous. If you read carefully, the Kono statement does not declare that Japanese government and the military authorities directly took part in coercive recruitment of comfort women. However, with the Kono statement, it is generally understood that the Japanese government admitted official coercion of comfort women. In fact, for those who accuse Japan, the Kono statement now is ironically the only evidence of government's coercion. In 1997, Japanese journalist Sakurai Yoshiko interviewed Ishihara Nobuo, who was vice cabinet secretary under Kono. In the interview, Ishihara confessed as follows, quote, we could not find any evidence at all to prove coercive recruitment of comfort women by the Japanese government and the military authorities. We tried to find in vain testimonies of coercive recruiters. Then we decided to adopt the interviews of 16 comfort women we conducted in Seoul as only evidence of official coercion. We didn't cross-examine or verify those testimonies. By admitting official coercive recruitment, we thought we did South Korea a great favor. We treasured friendly relations between Japan and South Korea that much, unquote. The Miyazawa cabinet treasured bilateral relations with South Korea and disgraced Japan. The military and prostitution. Almost every nation was involved in charge of facilities similar to Japanese comfort stations. Many countries had facilities that enabled soldiers to satisfy their sexual needs while they were stationed on foreign soil. In other words, Japan was not only a country that possessed facilities such as comfort stations. American troops and Korean troops are no exceptions either. During the Vietnam War, sexual services offered by Vietnamese women were extremely popular. Moreover, official military brothels were established within each division's camp of the U.S. Army. South Korea deployed its troops in South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Korean troops enjoyed sexual services of Vietnamese prostitutes. Furthermore, Korean prostitution brokers established their own brothels in South Vietnam. Vietnamese as well as Korean prostitutes worked in those brothels. In the United States of America, Vietnam War veterans must know these facts. Japanese Army's comfort stations were like brothels in South Vietnam. During the Korean War, South Korean government established 4 official brothels for U.S. troops. Let me show you an interesting Korean newspaper article dated August 31st, 1939. This is an article of Dong-a-ilbo, or the East Asian Daily News. This article reveals that 45 evil Korean job brokers kidnapped more than 100 young rural women and sold them to Manchuria, and that detectives of the Korean police arrived in Manchuria to rescue those victims. There are many similar incidents like this. In those days, more than half of the policemen in Korea were Japanese, because Japan was governing the Korean peninsula since 1911. The policemen, Japanese as well as ethnic Korean, were trying hard to save abducted women. The Japanese government did its best to rescue kidnapped women and to crack down upon evil prostitution brokers. Reality was quite opposite of a fabricated image. On compensation and apology. In 1965, Japan and South Korea concluded Japan-South Korea Basic Treaty. With this treaty, Japan